Well, we are now less than 2 weeks away from Election Day, and the Missouri Secretary of State is urging Missourians to return absentee and mail-in ballots.
Our Missouri Capitol reporter Emily Manley explains how to make sure your ballot counts when you return it.
Thousands of ballots were not counted during the August primary election. The Secretary of State said out of all the registered voters in the state of Missouri, nearly a fifth of them have already voted.
What we saw in August would compete with any normal presidential general election, and we are substantially above that.
Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft says there are more than 4.3 million registered voters in Missouri.
I think we can safely say that 15 to 20% of the people that will be voting have already voted.
Due to the pandemic, Missouri is offering absentee and mail-in voting this year. During the August primary, nearly 5,000 ballots weren't counted, less than 1% of all votes that were cast.
We see things as simple as you send back your ballot envelope, but you forgot to put your ballot in it.
Although the period to request an absentee or mail-in ballot closed earlier this week, now it's about returning them.
If you still have one of those ballots and you're intending to mail it back now.
Absentee ballots can be returned in person, but mail-in ballots cannot.
If you take in a mail-in ballot, you're not allowed to return it by hand. It must be returned by mail. If you return it by hand, you would have to ask the election authority to spoil it, which I believe they will, and then they could give you a new ballot to fill out on Election Day.
After multiple voting groups sued, asking for mail-in ballots to be returned in person, Missouri Appeals Court stayed a court ruling Thursday that ballots must be returned by mail.
I don't think it's right in the midst of voting to change the rules. But when it comes to the administration of election, we need to decide what those rules are, and then whatever they are, they have to apply to everyone.
I'm joined now by our Jefferson City reporter Emily Manley to talk more about voting in Missouri. Now, Emily, when do mail-in and absentee ballots have to be in by?
Well, they have to be in by 7 p.m. on Election Day, so they can't be postmarked on Election Day. Instead, they have to be in the actual hands of your local election authority by 7 p.m. on Election Day in order for your vote to count.
Now, what if you asked for an absentee or mail-in ballot, but you're worried about it getting there on time?
And that's what I've heard from a lot of people. I know that we're like on August, we're not in August anymore, we're in October 22nd. Even though we're this close to the election, they're still worried about it getting to your local election authority. So instead of waiting till that last minute and being concerned, you can actually walk into your local election authority on Election Day, and they're calling it a spoiling ballot. What that means is you tell your local election authority that you don't want to vote via mail-in or absentee anymore, and they will spoil your ballot. That would be surrendering, another word for it. And then they would be able to let you vote in person. So if you're too concerned, you can hold off. Obviously, with absentee ballots, you're still able to send them in, or you can walk them into your local election authority. But for the mail-in ballots, you can only return them via the U.S. mail. So if you're a little bit nervous about that, just take them into your local election authority on Election Day and tell them to spoil your ballot so you can vote in person.
Okay, and real quick, what are some of the main reasons why nearly 5,000 ballots were rejected in August primary election?
Well, you would be surprised that one of the major reasons is because people didn't sign their ballot. I know that that sounds like a very easy thing to do, but when it comes to that mail-in or absentee ballot, there's a lot to do with it. So one of the main reasons is that it wasn't signed, and then the other main reason is that the ballots were received too late. So if you haven't had a chance to get that absentee or mail-in ballot in the mail yet, make sure that you do so your vote counts.
All right, definitely some things to consider. Thank you so much, Emily.